Hello and welcome to the WriteCome.com podcast, where we help you to make money from your words. Each episode will be sharing tips, tricks, and strategies you can use to make more money from your writing, publishing, and marketing to your fans and audience. Let's get started with your host, Barry J. McDonald.
Hi, this is Barry here, and you are very welcome to this podcast episode from WriteCome.com. And today's podcast episode is entitled Do It for the Kids. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that your parent is a well-known actor. They are one of Hollywood's kind of elite actors, and growing up you have followed them all over the world. You've been to movie sets, you've been to movie premieres, and you've been bitten by the bug yourself. So when they come to you one day and say to you, you know what, son or daughter, what would you like to be when you grow up? And because you've seen, how they have made a big difference in the world. Now, I'm not talking about one of these actors who has gone off the rails and become a drug addict, or that their life has turned into a car crash. It's somebody that has, been really well, respected and has left a good volume of, good quality acting behind them. So you say to yourself, well, you know what, I would love to be an actor like you. Now, I want you to imagine another scenario. If your parent was a plumber, or if they were a truck driver, or if they were something like a milkman, and they ever came to you and said to you, well, what would you like to be? Chances are probably good you are probably going to look at a business or profession along the kind of same skill levels as your parent, in that, how many kids have ever said, well, something, I want to be an astronaut. Somebody whose father was a milkman or a plumber, they want to be an astronaut, or they want to be a racing car driver, or they want to be a famous actor, or they want to be something like that, which is something that has gone way beyond what their parent has done. Unfortunately, a lot of us will probably look at what everybody is doing around us, and we will slot into the same vocation or the same kind of jobs in the same skill level because of what our parents have done. Now, the person who has that parent who is an actor doesn't have that kind of limiting belief on them. They have seen, what it's like to be an actor. Now, you can probably say, well, in some cases, maybe that child that does follow along is probably, going to walk along in their parents' footprints. So they will probably get some, an easier time, because the parent has almost kind of cut the jungle ahead. They have been out with the machete. They have done all the groundwork, in that they have probably built a name for themselves. They built a big catalogue of movies, and because they have done that, they have made the path easier for their child coming along. So the second generation of kids coming into acting probably have it a lot easier than the first generation, because they didn't need to do all the groundwork. They have a path that they simply just need to trot along behind, and because of that, their life is probably going to be a lot easier. Whereas the other person whose parent is a plumber or a truck driver or whatever, because nobody in their family has ever beaten a path down, it's very easy for them to follow along with their parent. And it's very easy when that parent asks them what they would like to be. It's very easy for that parent to say to them, something, son, maybe you shouldn't risk it as, American footballer, or an astronaut, or a scientist, or, an actor, whatever. Maybe you should play it safe, and maybe you should, get a job like I have, because, when you get your apprenticeship done, you will be a bricklayer, and people are always looking for bricklayers, or people are always looking for plumbers, or people are always looking for truck drivers. So you'll have a safe vocation, so you can guarantee that you can get a job. What if you do go ahead there and become an actor, and you can't find work, and you're living from hand to mouth, and I'd really be worried about you. And because I'd be worried about you, I would rather you would do something, something more kind of down to earth, and something that all our family has done. Now, I want you to think about that for a moment. In whatever you are doing right now, has it been the choice, whatever vocation you've gone into, whatever job you've gone into, has it been a choice of your own, or has it been a choice of looking around you and seeing what everybody else has done and going for the safe option, or going for something that is in your family's wheelhouse? Maybe you are trotting along on that path that your parents have laid out before you, in that, everybody in our family has always been plumbers, everybody in our family has always been doctors, or everybody in our family has done this, and you have trotted along, on that pathway that they have laid out. And because your family has gone along it, it's an easy path, and nothing too much is expected of you. You've always expected to be a plumber. You're always expected to be whatever it is the family trade is. And I want you to think about that for a moment. You know, you have two different people. You have the actor who has opened up a huge pathway for their child in celebrities and probably doing things. Now, that isn't saying that maybe their child will turn around and say, you know something, I don't want to be an actor, I want to be a vet. And maybe they might just ditch whatever their parent is doing, and they may go, maybe some other path instead, become a doctor or a surgeon or whatever. But there probably is a good chance that they are probably going to go for some vocation that isn't going to be lower down the kind of income scale. They probably aim a little bit higher than somebody who is probably coming from a working background. Now, you're probably wondering, well, why am I talking all about this? What has this got to do with you? Well, if you've listened to yesterday's podcast episode, you probably have heard me mention a report that I'm putting together at the moment that is on the topic of why you can't write a book. Now, I'm sure you probably have some goal that you'd like to achieve this year. Maybe it is blogging, podcasting, or whatever. And you are probably going to be met with a lot of mental hurdles. You're probably going to be met one of those mental hurdles in that no one in our family has ever been a writer. No one in our family has ever, spoken on camera. No one in our family has ever had a podcast. No one in our family has ever done this and done that. And whatever you are looking to do right now, it's very, very easy for you to give up when you start coming under resistance. It's very easy when you do start facing criticism, or you do, maybe push yourself a little bit harder than anybody in your family has done. Maybe building an online business. Nobody has ever had an online, or never even had a business of their own. Maybe all your family has always been employees. And for you to kind of step out of that wheelhouse and thinking that, well, you could have a business of your own. You could have a huge website where you could be selling products on it, or books, or whatever. And because nobody in your family has ever done that, it's a really stretch for you, and you are probably beating down a path right now that is probably something that maybe your family has never done before, or maybe you have gone down that path a little bit and maybe you've come under some resistance, and because it's been so hard, you have slowly kind of veered back onto the family path, and you're trotting along behind doing the same things that your family members do, your friends do, or your relations do, whatever, but you are kind of keeping yourself in the kind of laneway or the path that everybody else is around you. And maybe because everything got tough for you, maybe you had a little bit of criticism on your writing, or maybe not many people were watching your YouTube channel or whatever, and because that was a little bit tough, you are starting to veer back onto the easy path, or the path that all your family has gone along. But I want you maybe just to consider for a moment, if you had kept on that path, if you did become a really, really big podcaster, if you did really, really become a great fiction writer, I want you to think about what kind of an inspiration or what kind of legacy you would be leaving behind for the generations behind you. Now, maybe depending on your age, maybe you are older in years and maybe all your kids are grown up, so maybe you can't influence them. But you want you to think about maybe the younger generation that's coming behind you. Kids maybe who could be looking at what their parents are doing, and unfortunately will probably follow along in what their parents. Now, I'm not saying that maybe their parents aren't in a good job or aren't in a good vocation, but for a lot of people, unfortunately, a lot of people are going to menial jobs, 9-to-5 jobs that they probably hate, and they are trotting along behind their parents, going into, it's almost like they are a conveyor belt. Their parent is traveling into a 9-to-5 job that they hate, and unfortunately their kids are looking at what the parents have done, and have probably a lot of programming and negative beliefs about themselves, and because of that then they may have some low self-esteem, so they are going to follow their parents into that 9-to-5 job, into a job probably they're never ever going to like. But imagine if they had a grandparent now that was a podcaster, or a grandparent that was a fiction writer, or an uncle or an aunt that was really well known for having a huge online business. I want you to think about how many options you would open up for that generations coming along behind you. How you would maybe make them have a look and say to themselves, well, something, I could be, I could be a worker in a factory like my dad, or I could be I could be a trucker or whatever. But something, look at my grandparent over here who is a huge podcaster, who is a fiction writer, who is doing something right now that really, really inspires me. And they have opened up a huge kind of, opened up maybe that child's imagination into all the different things that they could be, because of the trail that you have left behind you. So I want you to think about that day. Keep that thought in your mind today. What would what would you leave behind you by doing what you're doing right now? Yes, it might be tough. Maybe it could be hard to turn up every day and do fiction writing. Maybe it's hard to, speak on microphone in a podcast or whatever it is. But I want you to think about the legacy that you could be leaving behind you. And I want you to think about, doing it for the kids when you find it tough, when you find maybe you aren't making progress, in that, you never know who you could inspire further along down the line. Somebody in your family tree could look up to you and say, you know something, a generation or two ahead of myself here, my parent was a great podcaster, or they were a well-known fiction writer, or they were an actor, or they were something else. And because you have broken up that path or laid out a kind of another direction that they could go in it, you may be very surprised how your kids or your grandkids or your great-grandkids may suddenly start taking up different things and mightn't feel locked in or narrowed in by what their parents are doing or by what everybody else is doing around them. So, as I said, a lot of us, unfortunately, I know in my own case, my father was a truck driver, so it was very, very easy for me to, to follow along in his footsteps and become a truck driver like him. I spent many days traveling along with him up and down the country, doing jobs here and there. So I well know what it was like, and some days it was fun and some days it was a pain in the butt, but he always drummed into me over and over and over again, maybe because he didn't want me to follow in his footsteps. He always said to me, Barry, don't ever become a truck driver. Don't ever become a truck driver, because it's a hard job and there's better options out for you. And I know I don't want you to follow along in my footsteps. And then I'd also grown up with other kids whose fathers were truck drivers, and they become truck drivers. And even now, when I see their family is also a truck driver. So there's a generation of truck drivers, one truck driver family after another, and it's all been that they have followed in their parents' footsteps. Because my father had told me, he's passed now, he had told me many times, you don't want to be a truck driver, Barry, don't be a truck driver. It's a mug's game. You don't want to get into it. You're working long hours for low pay and it's not worth it. And because I'd listened to that so many times, it was drummed into me not to become a truck driver. I'm glad that he did actually do that, in that he did open my eyes up. Now, I did get into kind of menial jobs in the early days, in that I was working in 9-to-5 jobs and in factories and assembly lines and all those different things. But I think that thought has always been at the back of my mind, and I think that thought has helped me kind of break out into some of the ventures I've gone into. So I've gone into fiction writing, I've gone into podcast, and I do a lot of things that probably my father might be proud of me. And I know even when my kids in my own home see what I do, when they see me, saying, say to me, oh, Daddy, yeah, what are you doing today? And I'm saying, well, I'm going to record a couple of podcast episodes a day, or I'm doing a little bit of writing. I'm sure I have influenced my kids in one way, in that they're probably going to think to themselves, something, I could be maybe a writer like my daddy, or I could do something along those lines. My son at the moment, Finn, he's really mad into Minecraft and Fortnite and all those different things. So he watches a lot of videos on YouTube, and he's been coming to me this past couple of days saying to me, Daddy, I'm watching all these people on YouTube. How can I create a YouTube channel like that? How can I make videos like that? And when I listen to him like that, it really, really does kind of, it cheers me up and it brightens my day, in that he is thinking outside the box. He is thinking, beyond a 9-to-5 job. He is thinking, these people are making money on YouTube creating these videos, and this is something that I could do. And you never know, what he might do in the future. Maybe he might go on to be a well-known YouTuber who is creating, videos, or he may go into maybe writing, he may go into podcasting, maybe he might go into a 9-to-5 job. But because he has watched me, and because he is asking me questions like that, I can see the gears kind of going round in his head, and, more options are opening up into his head, and he's probably thinking to himself, something, I could be a YouTuber, I could be one of these people with all these huge followings that could be making money, or I could be doing this, or I could be doing that. Now, I know a lot of this has come around because of the options of the internet. The internet has opened up a huge world of opportunities for the new generations coming along, but unfortunately there's a lot of generations, even though they have this huge opportunity right at their fingertips, they aren't making use of it. They are following along in the family line. They're just trotting along almost like a chain gang, following the generation before and the generation before, and not aware of what the opportunities they have, because they have never ever been shown what is out there. So I want you to think about that for a moment. If maybe right now you are feeling yourself, being crumbled by, maybe your lack of progress, or maybe you're finding it difficult, I want you maybe just to just to maybe take on the motivation. Hopefully maybe this might inspire you today in not just, thinking about what you are doing right now. I want you to think about how you could be an inspiration to your grandkids and all the generations that follow along behind you, how you could free them up from menial jobs, and how you could maybe mentally beat a path down in their heads, opening them up to more opportunities that they could be using right now because of the internet. So I hope that's hopefully a thought maybe that might give you some inspiration, some motivation, or maybe might fire you up maybe to go back to writing again, or stretching yourself, or maybe just talking to your grandkids and making them aware of or even your own children, if you have young children, making them aware of the opportunities that are around them right now that they could be going down, and paths that they could be following, and not following along the family line. Maybe you should be like my dad, maybe telling your grandkids or your family members, you don't want to do what I do, you don't want to do, and maybe if you tell them enough times, you can push them off the path, the family path, and you could send them down maybe some kind of more prosperous, or kind of more a happy lifestyle for them, because they are doing something that they love doing. So as always, as I said, I hope this has helped you out. And if you were inspired by this podcast, maybe if you'd like to share it with somebody, it would really, really be great if you would push a couple of the social media buttons and share it with your followers, or share it with your friends, or your grandkids, or whatever. I would really, really appreciate it. And as always, if you'd like to reach out to me, or if you'd like me to maybe cover something in a podcast, I'm getting very posh there, in a podcast episode, if you want to send an email to barryjmcdonald@gmail.com, or if you'd like to know what I'm doing, if you would like to maybe stretch yourself, or if you would like to direct some family members into the writing and publishing game, if you want to send them over to Writecom, that's WRITECOME.com. You'll find a lot of great content over there, and I'm sure I'll help some of your family members burst some of those limitation bubbles they have in their head right now, or maybe your own limitation bubbles. So as always, thanks for sharing your time again today. Take care and have a great day. Bye bye.
Thanks for joining us today. If you'd like more from the Writecom.com podcast, be sure to subscribe now for more tips, tricks, and ideas you can use to make more money from your words. See you in the next episode.